Hi, so I shall be delivering a short webinar on floor engineering and Strucsoft Wood framing in Revit. We have a number of these webinars coming along, so if you'd like to register for those, if you scan the code there on the screen or go to the web address there, you can look at the calendar and see what's coming up. And if you register for those, they get recorded, so you can always go back and look at them subsequently. Okay, so my name is Steve Crow and I work for the Graitec Group. And as you can see, I'm based in the UK. I've been with Graitec since January 1989, so yes, 36 years with Graitec, and I cover training and support, AutoCAD, Revit architecture, MEP, and I've recently taken on the Strucsoft framing software. And in my spare time, I like to have a motorbike, paragliding, always DIY to do, beekeeping or beekeeper for quite a few years now. And nothing I enjoy more than getting out with my lad, walking on the hills, and there we are, top of Ben Nevis. That was just last year. Anyway, so yes, we're going to today looking at, I'm not going to go through how to create floors, that will be in a separate webinar. So I'm assuming you can do floors and you can do the walls to support them and so on. But we'll have a look at splitting the floors and then how to add openings into those floors the various ways, and then diving into looking at framing those floors. And you'll see it's very much like framing the walls. Once you have those floors framed, we can then have a look at the analysis, floor analysis using an analysis engine called BCCalc. So run an analysis on the floor, excuse me, and then we'll analyze, look at the analysis output. After we've analyzed the floor, look at the output. And then from there, once we've designed the members in the floor, we can then have a look at creating some shop drawings, get some output. And then I'll leave the floor open for some question answers after that. If we can't answer them there and then, we'll take your details and we'll get back to you later on. Okay, so just to show you the screen there again, there's my email address if you have any questions after the webinar, and scan the code there to look at the calendar of the up and coming events and past events where we've delivered webinars, so you can go back and look at the recordings. Okay, so let's dive into it. Okay, so here we have the floor supported by some walls. I picked the floor here, look, you can see there are some internal walls as well. So now I'll go back to a top view here so you can see, I'll just spin it around. There we go. So I'm running Revit 2025 here. So we're going to split the floors up into manageable panels. I'm going to frame those panels up and then have a look at adding some openings and regenerating the framing to accommodate the openings in the floor. So yes, so the floor itself, you may want to split it to create separate panels if it's made off-site, for example, or just the analysis process. Now you can split the floor in Revit if you wish, but what I want to show you here is how to split using the MWF tools. You have a floor cutter tool. So to split the floor, we need to draw some model lines on the floor where we're going to do the split. So architecture tab, model lines there, look. And well, actually, if I just put some transparency on this floor here so we can see. I'm going to put some transparency in this here, override graphics by element. Okay, and then let's move the screen there. I'm going to set the transparency, 60% will do, so that we can see the walls underneath to line up where I need to do the split. So I'm going to create 3 separate floors here. Okay, so yes, back to the architecture tab, model line. I'll put in the middle of that wall there, look. I'm going to extend beyond the walls there. I'm going to select it to drag it past the floor like that, and pop another model line in, say on that wall there. It comes through to there. Okay, I'm going to just drag that up so it meets that other wall there, that other model line, sorry. And there we go. So we're going to use those model lines to split this complete floor. First I'm going to split into two, and split the one on the left there into two again. But to do that, you simply select the floor, which is already selected, and the model line there. So those two items selected there, come into here. I'm going to switch to the floor ribbon. There we go, switch to floor module. So there's all the floor tools. And there's the floor cutter tool here, look. If I select the floor cutter tool, okay, so I pick the floor, pick the model line, select the floor cutter tool, it'll go through and cut that into two separate floors. Now we'll come up with a dialog box to ask, I'm going to delete the original floor, to which I'm going to say yes. And we can also set the floor type in there as well. I'm just going to stick with that timber floor there, look. And an OK on that. So now what we have is one floor on this side and one floor on this side. I'm going to go through the same process to split this one into two on the left hand side here. So with the model line selected and the floor selected, MWF Pro, floor cutter, and delete the original floor, so don't have one big floor going through the whole lot. You might want to keep that because you might want your paneling to be shown separately and the floor going all the way through anyway. There we go. So now we have three separate floors, and I can delete these model lines or hide them. Now I'm going to select these three floors just to add some transparency. Right click. Oops. I'm just doing the floor cutter tool there. 1, 2, 3. Do a right click and override the elements and change the transparency. Oh, I'm back to 60, something like that. And OK, now so you can see through them. So that was using the floor cutter tool to cut into separate panels. As I say, it could have also done that with Revit as well and split those. We're looking at the MWF Strucsoft framing software to do this. Now you need to make sure that those floors are supported, and as you can see here, yes they are. So I just flip into 3D quickly. You can see here this one is supported by the walls, and it oversails halfway across those internal walls as well. It can also be supported by beams as well. If I put some beams across underneath it, that will be taken into consideration in the analysis. Okay, right, so let's get these framed up. Okay, so I'm going to select this one here, look, with the Strucsoft. I'm going to do a create, and it's very much like your wall panels. And you can select a template. If you assign a template to a particular floor type, it will frame all of the floor types in the building using that particular template. Here I'm going to go and select it because I'm not going to go through mapping. That's very similar to walls. So I'll select this one here, look, and create. And there we go. So it's put the markers on the corner, so they show the extents of the MWF Strucsoft framing floor panel, and it gives you the panel name as well. Now, you can also, if I do a regenerate now, it'll actually put the timbers in there for us as well. And there's the timbers have gone in there. Now, if we go and do the next one, I'll select this one here, look, and do a create. As I say, if I'd masked, I could have used a quick create. Use the same timber floor there, look. And if I want to put the framing in now, there's the button, look. If I tick that, it'll put the framing in straight away. And create on that one. And there we go. And I'll just do the last one here. Create. Oops, I should have picked the floor first. It's going to complain. Operator error there. NDF Pro. Create. And the same one there. And create on that one. Okay. Oops, I should do just a quick regenerate. I didn't do a frame it now. And there we go. Okay. So it shows there the framing on the floors. The icon that's appeared now, the green, shows the joist direction, and the red shows the panel direction. So in other words, this is it's labelled from the bottom. If I select this one here, look, I can see in properties, that is joist 1, and that'll be number 2. There we go, joist 2, and so on. So that's the naming direction, the panel direction. The green is the joist direction. If you want to change the direction, it's not a problem. You can select the panel, the label, or one of the beams there, look. You can have a look in here at the properties of this panel. Okay, it's the member properties, the joists, and you can see the angle is 360 degrees. If I make it 90 degrees, for example, and do an OK on that, and OK on that, it'll rejig it to go the other way. And again, this is going to be labelled as joist 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay, we can also change the spacing of these joists as well. Now, it doesn't really matter what member sizes you put in there, because the analysis is going to work out what member size it needs to be to support the loads that you put in. So we're purely looking at the position of these joists here. Okay, so again, if I select a panel here, look, and go to the properties and have a look at the member properties again, joists, and if we change the spacing here, say to 300, and first joist is going to be at 300. And we can also change the member size, but I say this is not, it's not important. It's not important because it's going to get sized through the analysis. And there we go, look. I'm going to change these others as well. Change the spacing on these. So it's in the properties, and look at your joist member properties, the joists. So you can change the size of the tracks, your end joists, and so on. Sheathing. There's all sorts of options in there. I'm not going to go through all of that. It's not the point of the webinar. We're going to need to get onto the calculations. So let's have a look at this. Make that 300. Oops, that's 300. And OK on that. And OK on that. Oops, I should have changed the member size on that one. I'll tell you what. If I go into MBS Pro here, look, and go to properties, I could actually pick a template, look, there we go, and close, apply, and OK. Oh, why didn't it do it? Maybe I haven't updated my template. If I go back to this one here, look, I'll update my template, properties, then I can just apply a template. Template 39300, update on that one. I should have maybe done a select. Select. And OK on that. So nothing will change there. So do the same on this one. Properties. If I select a template, we want 39300 centers, select. and OK on that. That's better. Again, operator error. And there, properties. So yes, with your template set up, makes it so much quicker to frame these things up. And as I say, if you set it up with mapping as well, then you just run the mapping, select, and OK on that. Yes, with the mapping grid and all those 3 floors at once. So yes, there we go. This essentially is setting the position of those. I'm just going to rotate this one again. See if you rotate, that's part of the template. So properties, just rotate it back, so you picked the template there, didn't I? Member properties, the joists, and set the angle to 90. Oh, I've done that. OK on that. OK on that. There we go. There we go. OK. So openings then. How do we add in openings? Well, we could add the opening in Revit. That's not a problem. Architecture tab, and there we go. Vertical opening. Now punch a hole through the floor. You can draw the opening by editing the profile. But what we can do is use what's called the opening manager. So we can, again, it's using these model lines. So if I go to the architecture tab, model lines, and I just say pop a rectangle in, come down to there, for example, face of that, and I'll put an opening in just there. So I've just drawn some model lines there, look. And while I'm on, I'm going to draw some over here as well. Rather than the face of that. Across to there. So yes, if I select these model lines where I want the opening to be, go to NWF Pro, and then under Tools, I can say create an opening. There it is, look, create an opening. Now I didn't need to select the panel because it knows the panel that it's in. And there we go. We can create an opening through the floor object. So at the moment, we have an opening marker and a hole through the floor. So what we need to do now is to update the profile of the panel, and that will recognize the hole. So there it is, look. So if I select the panel into here, update profile. Okay. Now it's complaining about instances in the same place. What it is, it's the outline of this floor. There is a coincident marker for the outline of the floor on the left. And as it says there, there's 2 of them, which is this corner here and this corner here. So it's just a warning. It's not an error, it's just a warning. I can do an OK on that. And there we go. So it now knows there's an opening there. Just regenerate here. Well, actually, if I set that is the opening marker. So using that tool there, I can set the opening type as well. And you've got various opening types. You've got rim supported and joist supported. With the rim supported, it'll add an extra full joist all the way through. It doesn't need it in this particular case, all the way through on the edge of the hole. Whereas with the, so that's rim supported, the joist supported, it'll just extend out the trimmers out to the next joist. Anyway, I'm going to go for rim supported. Select that, so that's going to be rim supported. And then you need to regenerate the panel. And there's the opening placed in there, look. So to select the opening to change anything about it, it's clicking onto the opening marker in the middle there. Same here, look. If I select the opening model lines there, NWF Pro Suite, Tools, create an opening, pop an opening in there. and then select the opening marker. And I can change the opening type. Again, rim supported, select, and then regenerate. Update the profile and regenerate the panel. Again, it's 3 errors this time because, of course, we have this duplicated marker here. Well, not duplicated, just they're overlaying each other. That's what it's moaning about. A double one there, a double one there, and a double one there. But don't worry about it. Should be okay on that. And then a quick regen and we're away. And there it is. We've now framed those openings. Have a look in 3D here. Oops. And there's the openings all nicely framed out there. If you need to remove an opening, then again, we could have selected the Revit floor, edit profile and removed it. Or what you really need to do is to use the MWF tool. So I've selected the opening marker there, look, and use the delete tool there on the ribbon. Use the delete. Okay, so that's removed the opening. We now just need to select the panel, update profile. We can probably just do a straightforward regenerate, to be fair. I always like to do an update profile and then regenerate, and that opening will disappear. And there we go. Cool. So far, so good. Right, so that's framing those out. Okay. Okay, so we've looked at framing these floor panels. The next stage is to look at the analysis. Now I'm going to have a look at this one on the right, floor panel 23 here. So there's on the ribbon, we have the floor engineer panel there. I just pull it out of the ribbon so you can see it a bit more clearly. And the first thing to do is to click onto the floor analysis configuration. And in here, you can see we have our analysis engine BCCalc. Now I'm running Revit 2025 here, and going forward, it's got this BCCalc engine. On previous versions of Revit, you will notice that there are 3 engines to do the analysis: BCCalc, Wood Forte, and Woodworks Sizer. Okay, so that's on versions of Revit prior to 2025. Now, to all intents and purposes, they work in exactly the same way. Essentially, they're going to apply the loads, set the building codes, which standard you're working to, and then run the analysis, and the analysis engine will switch out the members from your Revit members to the analysed members. So yes, so those 3 engines are in prior to 2025. 2025 moving forward, we've got the BCCalc engine in here. So I'm in 25, so I'm going to use this one. But as I say, they're all very much of a muchness, working pretty much the same way. Okay, so there's all sorts of settings in here. I'm not going to go through every last button, but just to mention in here, look, you can set it to different building codes. You know what code you want to work to in there. If you have certain manufacturers' joists available, then you can set those in here. You can edit the presets, and it will list the manufacturers, so you can make up your own preset of manufacturers who you have available. And it shows in there different companies. You can tick and untick the appropriate ones in there. That just shows the different schemes in there. So you can make your own as well. But anyway, so that's your inventory preset in there. On the general tab, this is where you set your design types or loading configurations. You can see you have a default one in there, and I've made one in there as well. Now, I'm no structural engineer, so these values may be way off here. So I'm just guessing at these. So you get your loadings in there, your live loads, your wind loads, and so on. And your deflections and so on in there. So you can set those up in here. You can create other loading types or design types, as they call them, to apply to each of those panels. And you might have different loading scenarios depending on where it's being built, where it's an internal floor, an external floor, or whatever. Okay, so that's setting up the job preferences there. Okay, on that. And I'm going to select this panel here. And here, this is where we apply the loadings, the loading type to this particular panel, so change panel design type. So it's selected this panel here, and it's going to add the design type to it. And here we go, and the default loads or Steve's loads, as it were, in there. Okay, so that's set that, the loading configuration for this particular panel. Okay. And then we can do the analysis itself. So there's the button, next one along, analyze this selected panel there. Click onto that, and it goes through, and it'll do the analysis. And it's going to analyze the beams and around the opening there as well, and give you a list of products that you'll want to be taken into account in the analysis. So there we go. It's come up with these manufacturers' beams in here, and across the top here you can see that it looks at the members in that panel and it groups them together. So you can see we have our trimmers. So there's the trimmers each side of the opening there, look. And the headers. You'll see it's harder than that one there. There's the header there. Can I move this way a bit? That's a bit better. So it groups them together. Obviously, they're all the same. They run all the way through, the same length and everything else. And it shows the products that it'll analyze. Okay. And typically I just say use the best analysis. I'm going to apply them to all the groups. It's no good having a small member here and a bigger member and different members in that floor panel. So we're going to apply it to all of the members, whichever one it comes up with as the best result. So to apply to all. Okay, and do an OK on that. So using the parts that we've selected, it's come up with the results here of the materials that satisfy those criteria, and it would list the different products for the different parts here. Okay, and it shows you down here that all the products and an overview of the results here on the right for each of those products that pass the criteria. So if you want to use a particular manufacturer's section there, look, you could do on there. And you can also put the hangers in as well. So if you have hangers loaded that are suitable for this particular member here, it will add the hangers on as well. We do need to have the hangers loaded. And it'll also produce a summary table as well. So you can see the full breakdown of it. I'll show that in a moment. Okay, so I'm going to get it to replace all of these members now with this one at the top. I'm just going to choose the first one. As I say, I'm no structural engineer, so I wouldn't know the ins and outs of these. I believe those are different manufacturers in there. So in fact, I might just pick that one there, look. So there you go, I've selected that one there. And I'm going to do an OK on that. And it's going to replace those members in there with those. It's working through them there, look. Switching them over. It's going to place those with the members that satisfy the loading criteria and switch them out. And there we go. I just close this box and it says save the results, all done, finished. I'll close that and let's have a look at this. Tip it over in 3D and you can see in there, I just tip it over slightly, that you've got those wood web joists in there, look. All the same size, so use the same member all the way through there. And with these on the other side here, I've already done these. You can see they're showing up in there as well. Okay. Right, so let's just have a look at the, go back to a top view there. So I created a table, a summary table previously to this. So if you want to call the summary table up just a moment. So you have the summary table, pull it across onto the screen. Oh, that didn't pull it across. Hang on, it pulled across. There we go. Right, so there's a summary table, and you can see it's supported on each end there, look. B1 and B2, and if there are other beams in there, they're just shown as a support underneath that member. You can see the loads in there, look, and as I say, I wouldn't know how to interpret these results, whether they make sense or not, but for the loads I put on, it should make sense. But yes, it shows you deflections, reactions, shear loads and all sorts in there. Your snow loads, if there was a snow load on there, and so on. And this would be produced for each member group. Okay, so I'll just minimize this. So it'll have a report for the big long joist there, it'll have a report for the trimmers and the headers around the opening, and so on. So yes, so that's doing the analysis. There we go. Okay, so that's all good. And those, obviously, they'll get those results can print off in a PDF and they can go with the job. Okay, so we have framed the floor, we've put openings in the floor, we've modified the floors, we have run an analysis on the floor, so we've sized all those members now. The last step is to have a look at creating some shop drawings, okay, for our floor panels there. Up on the ribbon, we have a floor manufacture panel here, look. Pull it out of the ribbon so you can see it a bit better. There it is. And we have 3 buttons there, look. The first button, it says it's the drawing manager. And there's several options in here. The top one being add a schedule label. And as it says there, it will find and label identical members. So it's a bit like the analysis. Now at the moment, on our panel here, if I select this panel here, look, and look in the properties on the left there, you can see further down that the label is joist number 5. So that's like an instance property. And this one here is joist number 4, and so on. So they are instance properties really. Now we don't need a shop drawing for those 2 joists there because they're identical. We need one drawing showing those identical members there. So this button here, what it will do, it will search through this panel, as it says, for identical members and give them a schedule label. Click on that. It works through, do an OK on that, and it will now label those up. So let's have a look now. If I select this same one here, you can see that the BIM label, the BIMSF label is J5 still, but it's added this schedule label. Now it's come up as J0. You can change that number to anything you want. So this one also, although the BIM label is J4, the schedule label, as far as the shop drawing is concerned, is the same, J0, as will be this one here, and this one, and this one. They're all identical members. So that's the first step you need to do. Okay. Coming back into here, we have the drawing manager. Now, essentially, this holds the settings for your shop drawings. As it says there, this tool allows the creation of floor shop drawing settings or setting templates. I click onto it. Out of the box, you get one template in there, and you can change the settings of this one. You can rename it, duplicate it, create a new one from scratch, or delete one. Okay, so let's have a look at what sort of settings are in the drawing manager. I click the button here, it brings this box up here. Now, the drawing settings will call on things like your text styles. It will call on things like your dimension styles, view templates, and drawing sheets. Okay. So they need to exist in this project. So they are Revit settings, your styles, text styles, dimension styles, and so on, need to exist in this project for these drawing settings to refer to them. Now, if they don't exist, it'll just use defaults. So don't worry about things missing. Okay. So first of all, let's have a look at our drawing board as our sheets. You can set the layout directory. Where are they saved? Okay, so you can select the folder. And you can also tell it, and there's the sheets themselves, look. So it'll take you straight to the sheet layouts in there. Okay, and there it is. And again, this is your sheet here. Looking at this, the sheet properties, you have various zones on this, and you can set them up in here as to the naming method, the drawn by, checked by in there. So margins, there's absolutely masses of settings in here. Now, I haven't got time to go through all of these settings. So it's telling it here in which zones to place which views. Okay, so in the 3D area, it's going to show the floor panel 3D view. In the top zone, the floor panel plan view, and so on. Okay. As I say, there's a lot of masses in it. Now, on the left-hand side, these are the views that you have that could be placed on those sheets. So you can see the views that we're taking at the moment is the floor plan drafting bill of materials, floor plan 3D view, and the plan view in there. Okay, on that. As I say, these are all the views you can add to your sheet. Now, if I was to, for example, to go and pick onto, say, the floor panel 3D view, and again, you can duplicate these, rename them, add new ones, or delete them. If I look at the settings of this 3D view, click on it, it asks you where the view is going to be placed on the sheet, insertion point. Is it going to have a view label on there? What's the name going to be? The detail level, visual style. So they're like Revit view settings, and a preferred scale for it, and so on. Okay, so that's for the 3D view. Now, if I was to go and select, say, plan view, showing the joists and things, let's have a look at the settings for this. And you can see these are different. With a plan view, we need to start adding some dimensions on. And these are all the options. If I just slowly move down them, these are all the options for placing those dimensions. And the ones which are ticked are the ones which are going to be applied using these settings. You can see here we're going to apply the bottom length, the right hand side, and the diagonals. Now, when you have a right hand side, you've always got the opposite one. Look, you can put a left hand side or a right hand side, put a top or a bottom, and so on. So yes, we're going to apply 3 different dimensions to our plan view there. Labels, you can add labels to these on the sheathing or the members. Okay, so these are the view options. Now, the actual settings for these, on your view settings, so you can tell it where to place them there on the dimensions. I was going to show you the dimensions there quickly, I'm short of time. So yes, we told it to place 3 dimensions, the bottom, the right, and the diagonals. And on the right hand side here, it tells these settings which dimension style to use. Okay, which dimension style to use. Go into the viewport tab there. Again, this is where you can set the detail level, shading, whatever. And down at the bottom there, you've got things like your panel orientation on your drawing sheet. So if you had a very tall, thin panel, that's not really any good to place onto a landscape sheet. So what you can do there is, you can say rotate it after checking for the longest member. You can rotate clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay, so that's also useful. It just makes the layout on the sheet better, doesn't it? You can rotate the panels on the sheet to fit the sheet better. So these are all the settings you can apply, and your labels there as well. Look, is it horizontal or vertical, the text style, and so on. So don't forget, those styles need to exist in this project. Do an OK on that. Your view scale there, I can't remember if I mentioned that already. The scale is typically set in your view. Now, if it's not set in the view, then in here, you can get to override it. Well, not override it, it'll use this instead. So I say, if the scale is not specified, use a scale of 1 to 50. Okay, so you can set the scale there. Okay, on the miscellaneous settings in here, we've got an option in there to run this distribution setting before generation. So if I click onto that, look at the settings, as it says in there, it finds labels and identical members and subassemblies for a single panel. So it just, again, it's a bit like that as I've shown before, where we're collecting together all the members of the same size. Okay, so run that before the join generation. I've done it already, so I won't take that. Okay, so if I do an OK on that, so that was, I think this, so all those settings are held in that one there. If you want to make a new one, if I just copy that one, look, I could call this one shop drawing settings. I maybe need to put a more descriptive name, such as the sheet size it uses, and there could be other things in the name there that gives a size on that one. So yes, you can just create a new one. I could change the settings on that one separately to that one. Okay, so that's main panel. Now, as I said, there are lots and lots of settings in there. I don't expect to pick it all up just in this webinar. It's all covered in obviously far more detail during our training sessions. And again, it's a service that we offer to actually create these settings for you, not just show you how to create them, but we'll create them for you so you can hit the ground running with your projects. Okay, so I'm going to close the Drawings Manager here now. Close the Drawings Manager. If you were to make any changes, such as the labeling or anything like that, you can do a refresh on it, refresh on your drawings, and it will update them based on the changes you've made. Okay, so just refresh them. And there's a button here to override hidden. Now what that can do, it can take your shop drawings with the members and it can override items which are hidden. And for example, if you wanted to show the pipe work in your shop drawing, or you wanted to show ductwork, where the ductwork cuts through, might be a riser coming through this opening here, and you want to show that. Is it a rectangular riser, and so on. So yes, that's on the override hidden. It's also in the Drawings Manager. I'll just quickly come back into here. Miscellaneous. Can't recall where it was. Plan view, settings, view settings. There we go. So it's again within the manager, visible categories. Now you might think, okay, it's going to just show joist and the sides there, but if you come into here, look, you can turn on anything you wish. Ducts, duct linings, so they will display in your shop drawings. Come down, I think there's some already ticked in here. Pipes, I think. Yes, there we go. Pipe fittings, pipe segments, and the pipes themselves. You want to see where they're cutting through those joists, if they are, and so on, how they're placed. So that's, again, within the settings, visible categories. There we go. Just okay on that, okay on that. So that's in the settings there. So close that. So now we are ready to generate the shop drawings for this floor panel 23. And you can see I've got one in here already for the floor panel 16, the previous one, another floor in this project. If I click the button there, shop drawings, and it goes away, and you'll see it appear in the browser down here. Okay. It'll generate this sheet automatically and create those views. And there it is, look. Floor panel 23 sheet. There we go. Double click on it. Cancel that. Cancel. And there we go. I brought it a bit too high up there. Click on it, move it down. Click on it, move it down. Excuse me. What's the scale in there? Okay, right there at 1 to 50. I could change the scale obviously in there. 1 to 20. Will it fit on? Yes, it will just not. But again, that could be adjusted in the 1 to 25. There we go. So yes, there we go. There's our view setup. There are no pipes in this one, by the way. And there's our dimensions showing, look, the diagonal dimensions in there, and our horizontal dimensions across the bottom there. And there's our cutting list there as well. So it shows us, see how it's grouped them together? So the J0 joists, the length is showing there, and the count. Now, the information that's showing in here, again, you can adjust that in the settings. What else do you want to show in there? Anything else showing there? Fittings, you know, like any brackets, joist hangers, that kind of thing. That could all be listed in there. Okay. I should have changed the actual heading there, look, as well. So you can change the headings in there, you just call it labels. So those are the labels, not it's picked up on the actual tag name, I think. But yeah, so there's your shop drawing created there. Brilliant. Okay. So we'll leave the floor open for any questions and answers there. Some questions I've had previously about this. Going back to the design section, can you add it, that question there, can you add in point loads, can they be added in, or additional line loads? Well, the answer is yes, you can add in extra loads on your joists. Can you add hangers? Yes, you can add those, but they only work in the analysis on rectangular lumber at the moment. So if you wanted to place hangers on, say, plywood web joists or lattice joists, then you can add them, but you'd be adding them in Revit and not in the analysis package. Another question I get asked is, we've got the analysis engine, will it work for open web joists? And the answer to that is not at the moment. Again, it just works on lumber and the products which are listed in the BCCalc. Okay, so yes, if you have any questions, just fire them in the chat there. If we can't answer them straight away, then we'll take your details and we'll get back to you. Brilliant, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.